everyone. So, hey you guys. Are we all feeling good today? Yeah? Yeah? I'm glad the weather is holding out for us. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with all of you at Freedom Day 2016. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to share my story and maybe get to know some of you after. Sound good? Yeah, thanks. So my name is Sama Alavi. I usually go by Sam. I'm 25 years old. I was born in Saudi Arabia to Pakistani parents. And then I came here when I was 8 years old, and I've grown up in Mississauga, Ontario ever since. Is there anybody from Mississauga here? Yeah? Hey guys. So good to see you. Okay. Then I went to the University of Western Ontario. I studied political science and history, and I haven't looked back since.
Can you hold this?
I now live and work in the GTA. And that, my friends, is enough about me. I thought that if I was ever fortunate enough to get a platform like this, if I was ever fortunate enough to live in a country where I could speak my mind and tell my story, that I would take this opportunity to talk about somebody who would never expect to be talked about. I'm going to spend the 8 minutes that I have up here with all of you talking to you about my grandmother, about my Nani. My grandma is the most selfless person that I know. She's kind and she's caring and she's forgiving and endlessly patient, which of course can be hard when you have so many grandchildren. When I asked her if I could share her story with all of you today, she initially said, "No way, you can't. What can you possibly learn from my story?" And of course she would say that. Of course she would question what we can all learn from her life lived. And of course, because I'm persistent and because I'm her granddaughter after all, she said okay after a little while. So I wanted to thank her for trusting me with this, and I'm so grateful that she allowed it. My grandmother was born in 1946 in what was then India. And this was obviously a time of great turmoil because this was when India and Pakistan began their partition. And as we all know, that was quite a violent period in that subcontinent. Soon after that, her mother passed away. So she grew up sort of neither here nor there, without many people in her corner, without many people rooting for her to succeed, wanting her to succeed. And again, this was all without her mother. She wasn't always treated very well by the people she trusted to take care of her. And then when she was in the 11th grade, she was yanked out of school to be married. Now imagine that. Are there any 11th graders here? Yeah? Imagine being told you can't go back to school because you're getting married. How does that feel? Not good. That's what happened to my grandma. She didn't have a choice. And soon after that, as sad as it is, her father also passed away in the violence that surrounded the Bangladesh Liberation War in what was then East Pakistan. That's a tough start to life for anybody, let alone somebody who doesn't have a mom or a dad. My grandmother's 70 years old now. She's 70 years old and she can still sit down and tutor her grandchildren in math and in science and in English. Can you believe that? They took her out of school in the 11th grade, but by then she had soaked up all of that knowledge and she held on to it for dear life, and she still holds on to it. She still remembers the math that she learned. She still remembers the English grammar rules that she was made to memorize all of those years ago. All of that stays with her, and that's how much she loved to learn, and that's how much she enjoyed and valued her education. My grandmother was denied the choice to go to school. She was not allowed the freedom to grow and learn in the way that she wanted. My grandmother was denied the choice to learn what she wanted to learn and then to become what she wanted to become. Her freedom to choose, her ability to choose, was taken away from her at a very young age. And I want you to remember that. But I want you to remember more than anything else, most of all, is that she did not let that define her. And that's the key. She grew up, she got married, she had 5 kids who've grown up to be the kindest people that I know, and she let them choose. Now, that's not to say that she always got it right, because no one ever gets everything right all of the time. None of us. And that's okay. She had to unlearn some of the cultural norms that she'd been taught, some of what she'd become used to, and that's okay, because ultimately she raised these 5 children to go on and live their life as they wanted to live it. They got to go to school for as long as they wanted to go to school, and they ended up studying everything from biotechnology to anthropology to environmental sustainability and even computer science, all within a generation. And she changed that because she wanted to. She gave them the freedom to choose. She gave them a choice. So much so that my mom, who's almost 50, sorry mom, is actually still in school. And she's working on her 2nd university degree. So by letting her children have the freedom to think and to act and to do, I believe that she set into motion the events that eventually led to my family immigrating to Canada. And here we are today. I got to go to school. I got to choose where to go to university. I got to choose to live where I wanted to live, to befriend who I wanted to befriend, and ultimately to live the kind of life that I choose to live. It's my decision. And I can trace my lot in life, my circumstances, where I am today, right back to that choice that my grandmother made when she could make very few choices. And that's so key to understand. So when my grandmother asks me what I can possibly learn from her story, well, where do I start? But I tell her this. Number 1, I learned that education, the freedom to learn, is a gift, and that it opens your mind and it opens your heart and it allows you to dream and then eventually to accomplish those dreams. It all starts with school, even if you don't like being there right now. Number 2, that though you have no control over the circumstances into which you are born, who your family is, where you live, how much money you have, what you do have control over is how you let those circumstances impact your life and how you choose to live from that point on. Number 3, and this for me is the most important, the adversity you face when you find yourself asking, well, why me? Why is this happening to me? You can flip that right around by asking, what can I learn from this? The answer may not come to you immediately, but the key is in critically examining the things that happen to you all the time and learning from them. The troubles you face, the problems you encounter can also be your greatest strengths because they hold your life's lessons. And that's important to recognize as soon as you can. Understanding these lessons will only help you live your life knowing that you're always learning and improving and doing your best. So let's remember that. Number 4, you and I live in a country, and we're so lucky to live in a country where regardless of who you are or where you come from or what you do or where you start, you know that you have all of the support services available to you to help you exercise those rights. The rights that I'm talking about are your freedom to choose and live the way you want to. You can talk to your guidance counselors, you can talk to your teachers. You have an entire community just waiting to help you accomplish your dreams and reach your goals. So if you're stuck, which many of us can be, I was stuck, all you have to do is ask. You only have to ask. It's available to you. And ultimately, what weighs perhaps most heavily on me is this idea that I get to have choices. My grandmother didn't. I have a whole life full of choices ahead of me. My grandmother didn't. And that is something that I cannot take for granted. And as the wonderful and the courageous Mr. Max Eisen says, there is no freedom without responsibility. None. And so it's my responsibility, and I owe it to my Nani, I owe it to my Nana, I owe it to both of them, and all that they have been through to make the most of the opportunities that I get in this country, a country that's already given me so much. So, What am I going to do with my choice, my freedom to choose, my ability to choose, with my freedom of choice? You live in Canada. You're so lucky to live in Canada, where it's your right to have this freedom of choice. This freedom to do whatever it is that fulfills you, whatever it is that makes you happy, to live the kind of life that you want to live and to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. Nobody else's, yours. And since there's no freedom without responsibility, and so you too are responsible for living your best life. And you are responsible for following your dreams and making the choices that get you there. That's on you. And I have no doubt that you can do it, because there's no better place on earth to be to become who you want to be. And I have no doubt that you can get there. So when I asked my grandma, when I was having this really tough conversation with her, what she would have studied had she been given the choice to continue, without a moment's hesitation, she turned around to me and she said, physics and math. Physics and math. Imagine what she could have done with her life had she been given that opportunity to go ahead and study physics and math because she wanted to. How about that? So ultimately, my grandmother, she could have continued that old tradition of the denial of choice, especially for little girls. Like, she was denied the choice to go to school because she was a girl and it wasn't as important for her to go to school as the men in her family, but she didn't. She made sure, to the best of her ability, that her kids went to school for as long as they wanted to, and she, along with my grandfather, I have to give him a lot of credit, opened up for their children a million doors. And they've opened up for me a million doors, and I'm grateful for that. So, what are you going to do with the freedom to choose? Think about it and do your best. I'm sure you can do it. Thanks, you guys. You've been great.